Or to die. Greetings, and how are you now? Welcome back to another installment of Wander and Wonder. It's hard to know which one comes first, because I'm often found wandering before I even started wondering, or wondering before I even started wandering. Anyways, this is a meander off of the main subject of today's talk. I'd like to address the fact that I'm currently in a graveyard, and the general location of these videos is subject to some changes in the next little while as I find my footing. This is a new camera. Hopefully the mics work a little better. They're not as subject to the wind, but we'll see. I'm still thinking about getting that directional cardioid mic, just to increase the quality for everybody who actually listens to these. It's just a small handful of you guys, like 10 people. If you enjoy the content, like show one of your buddies or something, let's get this shit popping off. Pardon my French and the street talk. I'm not so up to date with all the slang. I don't really know what popping off means. No. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about celebrity. Before I get into that, I think it's quite proper to address the fact that this is a cemetery, and as beautiful as it is, as much of a symbolic statement as it is, should pay our respects just briefly to the dead and to the king of the Klondike. To think about the amount of people that have died on this earth, compare that to the number of people who are currently alive. That's an interesting thought experiment. Anyways, today I want to talk a little bit about celebrity, the different forms of celebrity, the ups and downs, who really becomes a celebrity, and what it takes really for one to thrive in the beast system, which disseminates celebrity like some sort of a drug or some sort of a daemon that takes over people's identity. I often think of the tiers of societal success. You often think of somebody like an actor as the utmost celebrity, or maybe a musician, but generally for people to see actors, like people who are in movies or television series. It doesn't really matter who these people are, but you know them. They're on the sides of buses and billboards, and there's tons of money that's pumped into advertising these people who, in large part, have given up their autonomy. I don't want to see the train approaching from behind in the eye of the camera, so I'm just gonna get off those train tracks while I do my thing. So celebrities give away their autonomy. You kind of think about this like not only with actors, I guess, but like what is being a politician? An actor on the world stage, the theater of war. I compare politicians in a lot of ways to actors. Much of what they say is scripted, and it's memorization, and it's pageantry. It's not so much what is said as the way it's said and how it affects people. And that's a whole interesting bag of worms in of itself, the intention behind our words and how it's interpreted. But it's interesting, like to be a celebrity outside of the beast system, you're able to somewhat maintain your sense of being sovereign. You know, you aren't asked to compromise so much with the things that you believe, or the things that you say that you believe, or say to other people, or, you know, even if you don't necessarily believe something, sometimes just asking questions could be too much. So the idea of real relationships, like somebody who's like a total social butterfly but exists outside of the beast system, it's becoming more and more popular as the tyranny of the system in which, you know, a lot of people are born into increases. Restrictions are getting tighter with what it is that you can say or can't say, or are even allowed to question, and the conversation space is shifting as the generations do shift and become more accustomed to our technological world. You know, the digital space, social media. This is where many like philosophical debates, conversations happen. And it's so interesting because it's always contained within the group of friends, you know, that are friends with that person who's questioning. The age of the philosopher is long gone. Like name a modern philosopher, you know, who isn't part of the current beast structure. A lot of the most radical thinkers are so renowned because they were radical. And if there's no space for them to thrive in this world because it's so oversaturated with everything that the system wants to feed you, then they are going to be unheard. That's not to say that they don't exist. So it's important for every person who's interested in the acquisition of knowledge to seek out people who are free thinkers, to interface with them, and yeah, you should be doing that. Like, out of random on social media, who knows what'll happen? You may end up like being best friends with them or more in the future. Like, always be careful with that sort of thing too, but just remember, like, these tools can be used any way that you see fit. It's not normal. Oh, sorry. The idea of what like being normal on social media hasn't quite taken root. Well, not completely. Imagine like people take pictures of their kids and their dogs and their pets, and when they go on when they go on vacation, people share pictures of their food, like stupid shit, right? People complain about politics, but that's not how it has to be used. It really could be used however anyone saw fit. If you want to use it to connect with people in different places, you know, strangers, like, you're able to do that so long as they consent as well, which I think is a very important rule to know, that both parties are interested. There are less personal types of social media, like Discord, for example, or YouTube. Like, these things kind of open up, or Odyssey, or BitChute, or Gab, or Minds. You know, any of these new platforms that are emerging that allow people somewhat of an anonymous voice, or at least one that's less restricted. And it's very very unestablished so far how we as human beings are to use those. And celebrities in the alternative sphere are pretty interesting. They're not bound to the same power structures that celebrities in the beast system are. So it's cool to find these people, and yeah, to not necessarily worship them as idols, but to think, it's like, if you were a celebrity, would you really want all of these people who you don't know, like, who know you? Or would it be easier if you actually were able to build many enriching relationships, or even a relationship in some sort of a cohesive tribe or group, you know, based around an idea, or even just something as simple as the love of knowledge? So to be the leader of one of these groups, Be a very interesting thing. I can't face the strange today. I just feel like there's too much peace on this trail for me to walk around with this, obtuse piece of technology. Now, a little more on the celebrity system that's currently in place, that possesses the minds of the masses to become categorically like these people, to be bought and sold. Their attention is bought, and their very being is sold. Like this is the sort of thing that you can think of, like it's post-punk, not the actual genre post-punk, but it's like after the punk movement, like the original grassroots punk movement, which you could argue isn't really grassroots at all. Sure, it was sold back to the people who weren't true but wanted to appear true. And you can see these categories emerge. There's so much overlap between different aspects of life, but I think division is really the name of the game for the powers that be. Divide and conquer still holds up well, so divided people are more easily tyrannized, and fitting people into these boxes, like I'm really just freeballing it here, but just thinking off the top of my head, it's like, well, you've got like your classic like blue collar rural male, it would be out of the ordinary for these people to do certain things, and without an awareness of the identity construct, people may actually find themselves like in a situation where, when somebody deviates from the normal of what is expected of this certain archetype of character, can catch them off guard, and it can even create a little bit of cognitive dissonance. But I think it's important to know, it's like who we are is not so static. These categories of people are not so static. You can think about like there's like the more meek mannered like scientist guy, where he's like he's really bookish. Like you get the idea of like what these people would be like. It's easier to think about it like almost like high school cliques, because more often than not, I feel like people kind of hold on to everything that they learn at their coming of age, more so than anything new that they learn. Because for a lot of people, like that is, it's like the best time of their lives. And maybe it's because they get stuck in the trap of what it means to be an adult in the West. Sorry about the wind. I hope it's not too bad today. I'm gonna try to go back in this trail. Maybe there's less people. But so high school cliques, like you got like the anime kids that like chill out and like draw manga or whatever, manga waifus. You got like the goth kids. There's a little overlap maybe with the anime kids, but they're more like dark, like they listen to the heavy metal stuff. And you got the jocks. Then you also have the farm kids. You can see the overlap there, but it's so easy to get stuck in categorical thinking. And I think the way that actors and celebrities influence our life is to create these categories in an immaterial space, like in a metaphysical space, and have them be acted out without deviation in the real world. All you really have to do, I suppose I'll do it right now, is to like look at what popular culture is and what people are becoming. As slang catches on, you gotta wonder where it does come from, and you can just think about some of the more popular like music artists right now, and like Lil Xan, for example, or Lil Peep or whatever it was, like he had some overdose happen to him. And that whole genre of like whatever it was, like cloud rap, it like created a whole subculture. And the egregore, like the idea, was charged with the use of lean or Xanax or whatever it was that these rappers were doing. So It was as though people who belong to that sort of genre and really do take their identity seriously, like as part of it, without having seen outside of it, like they end up in another trap of thinking that they are this person. I go on Reddit quite a bit. Like, I like to see what the plebs are saying sometimes. And I saw this thread about a lesbian who was attracted to a man, and she's like, I don't really know what to do. Like, but it's not only this one man. I'm attracted to like this other man, and lately I found myself very attracted to men, but I'm so stuck in my lesbian identity. And I was just thinking, like, man, like, doesn't lesbian like have to do with your sexuality, like who you're attracted to? You know, like, you considered like maybe that you're bisexual, or maybe that you do just have an attraction to men. But the thing is like, the culture around being a lesbian is so strong, and you can really become part of a community. And if you are committed to that community, it almost goes without saying that you would share certain values, like certain aspects of your life would be aligned with the other people's in the community. So it's so strange to me that somebody would post that, but it articulates this point pretty well, is that like we actually do become trapped in cultural movements. And not only movements that are, you know, pumped full of money by the beast system. I keep referring to like Hollywood, you know, the international like movie, music, celebrity, politics matrix is like the beast system. But you can even think about it just like anything that has like levels of control. It's like, oh, you have to answer to like this person. That's not totally grassroots. Pretty much part of this. Anyways, I digress. Do you know what? I just spun myself a web. But I made it into the trail, and there's not very many people here, which is quite nice. I don't know if you guys actually get a chance to just like be out in nature. It's good to like, if you're working outside, that's good stuff too. There's nothing like not having anywhere to be, you know, no place to go, and just like being outside in, you know, a nice natural environment. People look for magic all over the place. You know, they study these esoteric tomes, you know, for years and years, just to understand, just to see some magic, and, you know, all cooped up in their ivory towers. You just go outside for like 5 minutes and see like, you know, a robin in a nest, or like geese flying in a V overhead. Like, magic exists out in nature, and I think that's in a lot of ways why we're so tempted to stay out of nature. It's kind of healthy to go outside too, and maybe staying inside too much, not so healthy. Big Pharma will make a buck off you if you're unhealthy. So, you know, there's plenty of reasons, but one, maybe to understand like God, magic, spirituality, like that whole area of thought requires you to go outside to really feel it. Like the ancient peoples who wrote a lot of the original textbooks, like, didn't have electricity. A lot of them didn't have like proper home, like, you know, homes by today's standards. So it's important, like, just go outside. Celebrity. I made a new latz tree in this trail. Maybe we'll walk by it. There's a few other thoughts I had before this walk about celebrity, and in popular music, the disc jockey, the DJ. There's only really one other word that I can think of with DJ by, you know, right in a row. Hey, check these geese. And that's, I think it's in Islam, the jinn, which are ostensibly demons, and you have the devas, which, you know, are negative entities, like maybe like a succubus or something like that. I might have to look into that a little bit more. And it's so interesting that a female pop star is called a diva. So you've got divas and you've got DJs. It's almost like hidden in plain sight. Like, the music like possesses you. It pulls you away from your natural environment, and that's what, in a lot of ways, like heavy metal will alienate you from your town unless you live in a place where there's like tons of people. And that's why a lot of like people with strange music taste will move to bigger cities. It's just to experience like people that think the same way. But it's interesting to think that like these cities are the epicenters of these new ideas. Some of them good, some of them less than good. Some of them are degrading. Not to say that heavy metal music is degrading. I do love heavy metal sometimes. Not all the time. Can't listen to heavy metal all the time. But I do love it. It's great for getting like pumped up, get worked out. It's like an invocation, And I think to think of music, the way that it affects you as like part of an invocation, it's really an interesting way. If you're not like versed on like what that means, it's like invocation is like bringing an entity into yourself. Now, an entity doesn't necessarily have to be a life form. It could be an idea. We know that ideas can transform, just as human beings can transform. And they're influenced by so many other people around us. So many ideas become a collective. There's unconscious collective. So if you haven't become aware of an idea, it's still like I believe that all of our minds are connected and that we are part of like something greater. If we could pull back all the veils, we could understand that there is something which connects us all. You call it God if you want. You call it the spirit if you want. You call it collective consciousness. You just call it life force. But I do think that, we're all connected via this thing. So if there are concepts that you never heard of, or even just ways of thinking of certain subjects that you haven't yet been able to think in, you haven't been able to think in these certain ways, then understand that your unconscious mind or your subconscious may be informed somewhat by the collective, something that's not immediately apparent for you. And so we have these ideas, we invoke them into our bodies, we listen to music, and maybe there's even an unconscious invocation which takes place. In many of the esoteric texts that I've come across, the invocation of demons is, or spirits, or it all depends, because you're trapped in words and you're speaking about something that is like outside normal human expression. A lot of people have attempted to create hierarchy, metaphysical hierarchy of like demons and angels and various elemental spirits and like all of these different things. But the framework is really difficult to speak about unless you're experienced and you create a body of language around it with people who are familiar. And having a verified collective metaphysical experience is something that's got to be one of the rarest and most difficult things to truly know that you've experienced. I've had one such experience that comes to mind. It's my buddy and I. We were we stared at each other, and we went into trance because the human eye is a natural way. If you stare into someone else's eyes for long enough, you will end up in a trance. You'll feel like your body chemistry shifts the longer that you do it. And so we understood this, and we understood it'll be a little bit uncomfortable, and we have to kind of get over our egos a little bit at first, which I could do all the time, a little bit more, maybe not so much get over it, but like develop it so that it, I can transcend it a little bit more. But so we get past this first haha, like we're staring at each other sort of thing, and then the visions start coming on. And this is something you could do like with yourself in the mirror. That's what they call scrying. Have a candle in front of you. The less light, the faster it'll work for you. But you need a little bit of light if you're going to see your face. So you just keep staring, and the human eye is meant to detect motion and light. So if there's very little motion and very little light, but the eyes are still attempting to see, because what you're seeing is not directly a result of the eye, but it's like running through the brain's visual cortex, you can almost be sure that you're not actually seeing what's there. And if you aren't able to make a picture of what's actually there, your brain will begin to fill in the blanks. And so I can't really explain why this experience why these were these certain visions, but I stared at my friend, and in front of me I saw just his eyes, and everything else kind of go to black, because that's where my focal point was, this very small focal point just on his eyes. And so after he disappeared in front of me, he emerged again as a baby. And I watched this image of my friend as a baby in front of me with the same eyes staring back. I watched this image of him begin to age, to become a teenager. First he went through the childhood stage, then became a teenager, then he was in college, and then he was the man that I knew standing in front of me. And he began to get older than I'd ever seen him, 30, 40, began to get wrinkles, a little more decrepit, a little more sallow in the face, and his hair began to gray, fall out, and eventually his entire body fell off of his bones like sand. And I was still staring into his eyes, and in front of me again was nothing but blackness and eyes, after I'd watched my friend go through the entire process of aging in a matter of, a minute. Out of the blackness emerged my own face with my friend's eyes. As soon as that happened, I broke trance because it caught me off guard. I'm not gonna lie. I had never experienced something like that. But being open to the idea was half of why I believe I was able to experience it. I think a lot of people close themselves off from ideas simply by virtue of disbelief or skepticism. And I am in, the 99th percentile of open-minded people. I've taken some quizzes that have at least said that, and in my experience, I can understand why I would have gotten that result. And so being open to that experience, I believe, did foment it somewhat. And I think that the real shocking thing was when I began to speak to my friend about what happened. He was really, he explained to me that he saw the same thing, but in reverse. He saw me, as a baby, as a toddler, as an adolescent, as a teenager, as a college, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I died, fell off my bones, still looking at my eyes the whole time, and then became him, but with my golden eyes, my amber eyes. When I looked at myself and had his blue eyes, it tripped me out, because I knew that we were connected in this weird way. It wasn't like blood. It wasn't like we were actually brothers or anything like that, but it's kind of what I was speaking about, the collective consciousness sort of thing. And you know how they say dust to dust, ash to ash, dust to dust, or whatever? When two people are buried together, I think it's very profound. There's a tree here. It's pretty climbable. I don't know if I can do this while holding the camera. Probably not the best idea. So you got DJ Djinn Davis, celebrity. Another thing that's really interesting is how an actor will disassociate from his real name when he moves to Hollywood. He'll change it to some all-American. You don't want to be Jan Urbank. You want to be like David Starr, something stupid like that, like Billy Lionshead. I don't know what my celebrity name would be. Definitely neither of those. But it's interesting the fact that somebody that leaves, you know, their native land and goes to Hollywood and becomes an actor. Like, they shed their identity, and when they act, they are truly acting. Like, they're not being themselves, they're pretending to be something else. Isn't that just so interesting that a celebrity, you know, the highest ranking celebrity in my mind, being an actor, something to which other people will aspire to. They'll find categories within genres, and it's all somebody who's pretending, somebody who's not ever truly themselves. And even when they are interviewed outside of the context of being an actor in a film, you can almost be certain that they're not allowed to say certain things, because, you know, they might lose their position at this agency, because who they are goes well beyond them as a person. They're somebody else's cash cow, and they play the game because, well, the prize is just too sweet for them to say no to. So somebody who empties themselves in order to invoke something else, you know, it's very interesting. It's not being very true to themselves. It's not listening to the inner voice that's saying, do this, do that. It's being stuck in this ego construct existence, you know, becoming somebody that you're not, influencing other people to be like you. The people that are making money off of you know that they can make money from these people who want to be like you, you know. And the more degraded a person is, the more money usually it'll cost. It's not even necessarily about money. I think in a lot of ways, somebody who's invoking demons, like, what is it that the demon is getting out of all of this? In some ways, you can think of the energy involved, and you know, negative energy is something that you can almost be certain that dark entities are attracted to. You know the saying, it's like somebody who has a lot of problems, like, oh man, they got some demons, man. It's colloquial. It's embedded in our very culture to think that way. So yeah, just some more food for thought about demonic possession and demons and actors, and like that's what method acting is. It's just like really putting yourself away for a little while and letting something else in, being somewhat in control of what that thing is, but ultimately letting the thing have dominion over your very being in order to express something, you know, in like an art form. I don't know. Just spitballing here, but celebrities are not to be looked up to. They're not to be trusted. They're never really being themselves. And the truth is not allowed to be said by celebrities in the beast system. So don't let your identity become somebody else's profit. You know? Profits over profits. Like a biblical prophet. We have false prophets, you know, that's talked about a lot in the Bible. Like, don't trust these people, you know, like they're liars. I find it really interesting that the harp of some sort, you know, a very simple harp, was called a lyre. Actors constantly lying. Musicians, you know, who are on the world stage are constantly lying, like not necessarily allowed to talk about things. And another word that really reminds me of liar is lawyer. Like somebody who is well educated, like an attorney, somebody who's well educated on matters of the law, and somebody that's willing to lie for one of their clients, you know, to make a buck. I think the reason maybe why a harp was called a lyre, and like thinking about some, phonetics here, we know that words can't possibly mean exactly what you think it means. Like when you hear a word, like it's going to mean way more than it actually means, because it's going to sound like other words. It's going to bring up feelings, associated with that word, like in the lives of the individual. And it's interesting to think of a lyre, like the harp, creating a false emotion. And it's really interesting, when you watch like certain commercials or scenes in movies, it's like the music picks up, right? And it charges the scene with a certain element of, suspense, or sadness is probably the one, but that you could imagine most. But even happiness, like there's so much emotion in music. And a song like Hallelujah, Leonard Cohen or Jeff Buckley, or whichever version, sounds so beautiful, so happy. But it's interesting how they sneak those like bitter sweet lyrics in there. And same thing kind of with music like Elliott Smith. It's like he does have some minor songs, some ones that are overt, but there are some really happy sounding tunes sometimes, and it's brutal, like the lyrics, that you find yourself singing along to like these songs, you're putting these ideas in your head, and the music is making you think that it's like a happy thought. It's making you think that it's like an emotional frequency, which is not necessarily true. The mantra, the meaning contained in the lyrics, is almost like a little version of doublespeak. It's like, yeah, we're happy. Don't you hear it? Because on an emotional level, on like a physical level, this is the level at which people are generally, brought down to when they like consume alcohol or, different substances that shows like they become more in their body. Things go like that. Think about like the chakra system. I feel like when you drink, it's like kind of like you go out of your mind a little bit, down to the lower, like more bestial thing. And so when you're thinking like that, like you're not really able to take apart the lyrics. You're kind of like stuck in the music, and you find yourself repeating those lyrics later. It can be a very dangerous thing, because in the Bible it says something along the lines of, matters not, like nothing that enters the body can corrupt it, only that which proceedeth out. And I think that's to say, like, it doesn't matter like what you drink or what you smoke or anything like that. Like, it does matter, right? Avoid drunkenness, but you don't have to avoid booze. It's more about what comes out, like your words, your actions, like the things that you do. And so once a song gets in your head, you have a little bit of celebrity worship, you start dressing like this subculture, you start saying the slang, you start like seeing little versions of yourself all over the place. It gets freaking weird. Like, there's like such almost like a lie of a virtue of like being yourself. They're like, oh, just be yourself. Like, and it's like, is anyone truly himself? Like, what does that even mean? Who are we? If we let ourselves be influenced by cultural mechanisms, mechanisms which could be compared to forms of social engineering, we can be sure that our self has been taken from us, and that our being, our energy, is going towards something that we might not actually believe in. They've opened this pathway up. It's quite nice as a cyclist. Hello. Might be kind of windy up here. But just can't beat a view like of a lake. It's just the nicest things. There's hardly anyone. The odd person's not a big issue. This is probably the longest Wander and Wonder video I've made yet. But I think it's important, like, always beware famous people. Like, never just outright trust a celebrity. You can watch, like, you know, Oprah or Joe Rogan or Owen Benjamin or whoever, like, you know, whoever you want to watch. It's fine to watch them, but you gotta just relax a little bit. Don't take everything that they say to heart, like, and don't let them do the thinking for you. Like, don't just throw on a podcast when you're idle. Like, think a little bit for yourself. I know we all want to, like, crank out books and, like, be productive and stuff like that, but when you're constantly on the intake, just remember, like, it becomes you. So, you know, stare long enough into the abyss, and the abyss stares back also into you. I think that was Nietzsche. You study your enemy long enough, you become like them in order to defeat them. It's not conducive to a real victory, because now you've just become the very thing that you were trying to defeat. And go outside. Like, you don't need headphones. You can just go outside and listen to birds, listen to water, listen to other people's conversations. Like, just let the world happen around you, and just take a little while to slow down and really think. The less hurried we are, generally the more productive we are. I don't think in any way, like, hurrying to do a task actually gets it done much faster. In fact, I think, like, being very methodical about things is more efficient, because there are less mistakes, less corrections, and you don't have to feel stressed out inside. Like, you can just go with the flow. That's not to say, like, you can't give her. Like, you want to work fast, you want to do stuff, like, go for it. But nature never hurries. Like, even a babbling brook, a rushing river, like, they aren't hurried. That's just, like, that's their pace. And they're not going to speed up or slow down. The geese aren't like, holy shit, like, we have to go right now, it's too cold. Like, you know, flying south or whatever. Like, they're going at the pace of nature. And when we observe nature, we see, like, nothing is rushed. Things can happen fast or slow, but it's important for us to connect with nature and to not rush ourselves. There's so many unconscious processes happening as well, just like how far away everything is. And it's not just like a screen, like 4K drone over Scandinavia, you know, with relaxing, emotional piano music in the background. Like, you're actually somewhere, and your body knows it. It's not tricked into thinking it either. Like, it's the truth. Now, hopefully this video is not too windy, because it is kind of windy up here. Just gonna make sure nothing else on the topic of celebrity for now. Like, create your own social circles, you know. Give respect to people who have earned it, not people that have just been shoved in front of your face. And generally be skeptical of anything that's just been shoved in front of your face. Oh, there's a man with a dog up here. He's carrying a stick. That's good stuff. Yeah, see, I'm antisocial until I have to be. Howdy. Not like anyone cares. Not like I'm not used to being that weird guy. If it even is weird. Don't become a clone of a celebrity. You know? Don't, beware the major algorithms at work on your mind. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok. Like, when you post, they know what you're posting. They don't even have to look at it. Computer looks at it, tells you, oh, this is a picture of a butt, oh, this is a picture of a car, oh, this is a picture of food, like, oh, this is one with a human subject, without a human subject. We're going to put it in front of like this type of person. We know exactly what kind of person you are. All the data is shared between the big companies, so anything you've ever posted is like logged in some big file, and not even humans that read it, it's just like machines. And they're like, oh, like, what category, you know, can we quantify this person into? Like, I want to make them a more simple person to understand. So, you know, let's fit them like right into like the Jordan Peterson, like, you know, like centrist camp. You know, they watch Tim Pool, Jordan Peterson, and maybe a little Joe Rogan. Yeah, they'll fit right into that camp. Or no, it seems like they kind of respond poorly to those ideas. Like, let's fit them more into like something like a little more leftist. Like, you know, find some like, you know, some hardcore like eco-friendly people. We'll find some people that are like, oh, like, you know, pro everything progressive, and we'll like churn that out, you know, until we can be sure that this is exactly the type of person that they're going to be. Beware the recommended section on like YouTube, because, you know, you become everything that you watch. Like, everything that you've seen, your identity is like comprised of everyone you've ever been, you know, ancestrally speaking. Anyone you've ever met, like your friends, your acquaintances, just people randomly on the street, like any idea you've ever been exposed to. Like, your identity is constantly at risk of like losing its truth to itself, you know. And I believe we're all given an identity. You know, we're all given our being by something greater that knows, you know, and whether that force is God or not. I believe it is, but if you're not into the whole idea of God, like, just think, it's like the traits which became you have kept your family alive for generations. You have hundreds, thousands, like millions of ancestors simply in the last like couple centuries. You can think of it like binary math, you know? It's like 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4. We're talking like parents, grandparents sort of shit. We all have 4 grandparents, maybe not a lot. Then that becomes 8, then it's 16, 32. Like, we're at 5, right? Okay, let's go to 6. 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024. Okay, so that's 10 generations. 10 generations ago, there were 1024 of you. The next time, you know, the next generation, not even including siblings or cousins or aunts or uncles or anything like that, there was like an additional 512. So now you're adding 512 to 1024, and, you know, simply 10 generations. You can think of that as like 250 years, maybe 200 years, depending. That's almost 2,000 people, you know, who you have been. I don't have to explain, like, well, it's not like I even could. I can't really explain the concept of identity, but, you know, it's like all of those people's experience have gone into making you who you are. Like, there are hereditary traits which are undeniable. People carry forward things from past generations, and they simply can't help it. It's just who they are. And you can always change. Like, I find it very interesting when people are breaking multi-generational cycles. You know, of alcoholism, for example. It's like, yeah, his father was a drunk, his father was a drunk, his father's father was a drunk, and now I drink and I fucking love it. And it's like, of course you are. You're wired to love it. Like, it's how your family acted, you know, it's one of the things, maybe not necessarily that caused their survival, but it's something that they did and they survived. So here you are with it, you know. You're stuck with being an alcoholic or whatever it is. Like, my father played guitar. I play guitar pretty well. Yes, you could say, yeah, well, he got you into it young. And I'm telling you, that's not the only factor, because I've tried to teach young kids guitar, and some of them pick it up like nothing. Others, could take them 6 years. If they want it bad enough, sure, they can get it. And it's interesting how you can not only end an old cycle, but you can begin a new one. And so, like, try to do that. You know, we wake up every day, we try to set ourselves right with the world, right with God, right with ourselves. We look at the bigger picture. Like, we're setting ourselves up to be new people in the future, and to really feel like those people are us. there's somewhat of a disconnect, like an alienation sort of feeling in colloquial thought about what it means to actually have a family. And I don't know if that's just the way things are, or if it's the division and the media and everything is just so strong that it's causing like the family unit to fall apart. But we can think about it differently. All it takes is that eureka moment. You know? It's like, yeah, I do belong to a bloodline. Like, my family's done great things. And maybe you have no idea what your family did, but you can still be sure. It's like I'm a European living in Canada. I was never in Europe, but all of my ancestors are from Europe. Northern Europe, mostly. A couple Italians made their way in there too. Can't blame them. A couple Swedes, a little bit of Viking sex there. Maybe I don't know. Maybe they can. It's really, you know, we don't know how far back like our ancestry truly goes, but you have to assume that, like, as a human being, like, you have parents that are also human beings, right? So whatever, 250 years ago, 10 generations ago, 1,024 versions of you all existed, but they all had parents too. And you start getting into astronomical figures very quickly. Like, let's go to the 11th generation. Like, I'm gonna get fucked up by the math in my head, but I'm just gonna kind of freeball a little bit. Pardon my French, I swore again. I'm really trying to cut down. So 11th generation, you're looking at like 2,048 people at the same time. You know, and this is in addition to the 1024, the 512, the 256, the 128, the 64, like all of those numbers, 32, 16, 8, 4, 2, it's all added up every time, right? If you want to account for the entire duration of your ancestry. And that's not including brothers and sisters, because it's less. You can never predict exactly how many kids somebody is going to have. You know, some people have 2, some people have 20. So 11 generations, 2,048 people, 12 generations, 4,096 people. I'm just going to round up to 4,100 people. So 13 generations, 8,000. 13 generations ago, and this is 20 years project, so we're looking at like only 320 years ago, 300 years ago, give or take. Like, the numbers become astronomical, and we're told that the population during those times were much lower. But where do we get that information from? Like, is it actually true that the population was, you know, that much lower back then? And there's no way to verify it for ourselves. The other interesting kind of thing that pops up is incest. Like, brothers marrying sisters and mothers with their kids. It's like, that would kind of screw up the even like 2 parents thing every single time as well. And who knows, like, maybe that was more prevalent in the past. I wasn't there. But 1,000 years ago, you know, like 40 generations ago. Like, what's 2 to the power of 40? That's gonna be millions. I'm telling you right now, it's gonna be billions, trillions of people that have all come together to make you. That's where we get into the ideas of ancestor worship, like Odinism, even like the idea of Adam and Eve from the Bible, or the biblical bloodlines. It can be really trippy, because we all really did come from someone else, you know? Our original religions likely have been stripped away. Like, whatever you want to say, Abrahamism, like Abrahamic religions, you know, they came and they oppressed like the pagans. And it's like, well, I'm sure the pagans were super cohesive. Not really. Although it is interesting to look into like some of the syncretism between different tribes. You know, you have Odin and Woden, ostensibly like being the same god, but from different areas. Start to think about, like, if there was a unified people at one point that were, you know, forced to split up, and why were they forced to split up? It's interesting also to think that as the number grows, the further back we go, why does it seem as though in the beginning there were only two? Like Adam and Eve, for example, or like where did humanity truly come from? It's impossible to know. But don't take anyone's word for it. That's for sure, unless you can verify it for yourself. So there is some like deep inner truth completely unveiled, which makes itself apparent to you. You know, in those moments of like solitude, like real peace. Don't trust celebrities, don't be like them. This old guy, there's like this one old guy that's just like going exactly where I'm going, I swear. It doesn't matter. I shouldn't care about these people, but whole point, you gotta get outside mostly. Like everything else, like work on your physical fitness, because the more fit that you are, the healthier you are. You know, the better diet you have, the better off your mind will be. A lot of people refer to things like chemical imbalance these days, and yeah, sure, maybe your chemistry's all whack, but doesn't mean you can't change it. A lot of people take drugs to change it. You don't need to take drugs. Even things like weed, you know, California sober. You're not sober, like you are taking drugs. It affects your cannabinoid system, and you can create endocannabinoids like in your own body. You can, you know, in a lot of ways, even just invoke the idea of like what it felt like, and it can work for you if you let it, like if you're open to it. So don't do drugs if you can help it. Try to be sober. Try not to drink. Get quiet time, like to yourself. Go outside. You know, really think about things too. Like, let your mind wander. While your body wanders, your mind can wander. And Socrates was noted as saying something along the lines of like a true philosopher is walking, you know, and having conversations with the townsfolk. So I don't even know if necessarily you could like call this philosophy, because I'm not having conversations with anyone, but it certainly is a form of free thought. And this new camera and the battery like not dying immediately gives me a lot of hope for, you know, the future of what I'm going to be able to do with this whole thing. So if you have any ideas for future topics, or you want to hear my take on anything, it doesn't have to be an hour video, but I can easily like throw in a couple thoughts for the people that do watch this. If you're interested in anything specific, just let me know. If you enjoy this content, share it, you know, with whoever, with like a buddy, coworker, and yeah, like I think for the rest of this, I'm just gonna do some wandering. Spring is here. Like the robins are in flight. God is real. And you can connect with him. You don't need a priest to connect to God. You don't need to do like fancy rituals. Like you don't have to go on your knees or like fold your hands. You know, you don't have to like make a pentagram with all the candles and stuff. Like God's with you, you know? And you can invite anything into your heart. So why not invite like the highest thing that you could possibly conceive of into your heart? That's what God is, the highest of highs. And if you are really manifesting that spirit, like you trust that you're here for a reason, you can operate in a way that's, you know, beyond discomfort, like beyond negotiation. You just are the way that you are. And yeah, that's the beauty of being alive on this planet with unseen realms. you know, on the inside and the outside. As above, so below. As within, so without. So be healthy. Take care of yourselves. I will see you next time. This has been Wander and Wonder. I love you guys. Thanks for watching. Or to die.